Welcome to Graceful Guidance for such a time as this. I had planned on sharing a word that the Lord has been using up until now to encourage me, and I wanted to impart that to you, but I'm going to save it because I wanted to share something that was from 2018. And this channel is for parents with special needs children and caregivers who are having any type of special needs in their life. It doesn't just have to be autism, it is any special needs. And in addition to, of course, women in recovery and who are having transitional changes and challenges in their life. So I just feel so blessed to be able to be in this position. But this particular video that I'm going to attach and repost so that you can see it, I didn't record the second part back in 2018, but that's okay. I'm going to do a follow-up about what kind of happened real briefly, but also bring you up to speed. So in addition to having two sons who are adults with autism, I have a daughter who's an adult, but she's a young adult. She'll be 19 next month, and she's doing amazing now. But back in 2018, she was diagnosed with a non-epileptic seizure disorder. She is now seizure free a year and a half, and she's been cleared to get her driver's test, and will be taking her test, I believe, in 2 weeks. Maybe it's a week. Maybe it's a week. But at any rate, she's doing wonderful. But the whole point of me sharing with you is to really speak to parents who have children who have non-epileptic seizures disorders. There's a huge rise in that, and I do speak on a little bit of what my thoughts are towards the end of the video. But I start to share my story of how this happened. And again, I didn't finish with a part 2 at that time. We had a lot going on at that time. I can't even begin to tell you why I didn't do a part 2. But I would like to share part of that story with you, and then I will also do a follow-up to share briefly the part 2 piece that I believe I was starting to go into, and what happened and how we got here. So, and I will tell you that God is faithful. He is faithful. He is a God who sees. And that's actually a little bit of what I was going to talk about, our God who sees us. So this is a good segue into that encouraging word. So enjoy this part of my life. I guess maybe enjoy is not the correct wording, but I just want to invite you to come into a piece of my life that was very challenging back in 2018, and that I share a little bit about that. It was a lot. And so I thank you for being here, and I thank you for taking the time to listen to part of my story. And I hope that through this, the Lord imparts some encouragement or some type of nugget that you can take away from it. Hello and welcome to Rain's Journey. I'm Lorraine. So today I wanted to start talking with you about the journey that I have been on with my daughter. My daughter has PNS, which is psychogenic neurological non-epilepsy disorder. What that is you have seizures that look like epilepsy, but they're not. And it is psychogenic. It's psychological. They're real. They're not fake. It really is happening. But it still is a seizure nonetheless. When this first began, which was September 7th of 2018, it came out of nowhere. There were no indications of anything. We were at our co-op group. We belong to a co-op group that we do homeschooling classes, and she just started having weird body movements, and I kind of thought she was playing around a little bit and didn't pay any more attention to it. So by the time lunchtime came around, third period, she says to me, "Mom, I don't feel very good." And she said she was feeling a little nauseous. And um, I knew that maybe she was feeling a little anxious. It was the first day back, and um, it can be a lot of activity in these co-op groups. There's a lot of children, and it can be overwhelming. And by the end of the day, you're pretty tired. It's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work. At any rate, so I felt that she just needed to go home and rest, and that we just needed to take a break. We were all done for the day. So that's what we did. But come later in the afternoon, 3-4 o'clock-ish, these involuntary body movements that she was having were getting worse. And now at this point, there was no seizures involved. It just was just kind of almost like tics, or if you were just to go like that with your hand or go like this. They were just jerks. They weren't, but it seemed odd to me that she was continuing to do this. And at this point, I knew that there was something going on. I knew that I was dealing with something. I just didn't know what. And so I thought, okay, maybe she just needs a back rub. Maybe she's just really stressed out. I just didn't know. So I rubbed her back for about 30 minutes, and these movements were getting stronger. And so I said, I think I should take you to the doctor. I really didn't know what I was dealing with. So it was pretty close to closing time for her doctor's office, so I took her to urgent care. They immediately took a look at her and said, "You need to take her to ER. She needs to be seen." They didn't know either, but they knew that they were not equipped for it. So that's what I did. And I was a little frustrated about that, because I know how the ER is. If you are not bleeding to death or dying at that moment, you will be waiting for hours to be seen, and it can be a very slow process. And I really didn't want to do that. But I knew that she needed to be seen. And although we got to a room relatively within about 45 minutes to an hour, we got into a room. The whole ER process was probably about 5 hours before she was actually admitted. But still, at this point, she was not having seizures. She just was saying she didn't feel real great. And so by the time we got admitted into a room, well, we weren't admitted at this point yet. We were in the ER in a room, and they were trying to figure out what was going on. They did give her some medication to help relax her, but they didn't do that until the seizures started. At this time, my daughter was dealing with some depression. I had her in therapy already, counseling rather. And I'll talk about that in another video, my thoughts on life coaching, counseling, and therapy, and my personal experience with some of that. That's another video. So we were addressing some issues. She was feeling pretty bummed out about my divorce with her dad, and some of these things that children do go through that need to be addressed. And not to mention being a middle schooler and some of the awkwardness that you go through at that age, and just kind of really struggling. I remember when I was in middle school, it was the most awkward time of my life. I wouldn't repeat it for anything, but I remember just always feeling just kind of a hot mess. You just don't feel good. You don't know who you are. There's a lot of pressure. It's just a really hard age. And so I of course was very compassionate to that, but we have had a lot of changes, and I knew that she was feeling kind of overwhelmed. We had just got into a new home, and there just was a lot all at once. And so I wanted to be sensitive to that. So they, of course, at the hospital asked her how she was feeling, and I knew that she was dealing with some heavy issues. She was feeling suicidal. And spiritually, I stayed in prayer for her. I knew how she was feeling. Although I'm not her and I don't know precisely how she was feeling, I could understand her feelings. So that was one of the reasons I did have her in counseling, as I wanted her to really pinpoint what was actually going on. Because to say that one is suicidal, or that one doesn't feel like living, or you're just so bummed out you don't feel like your life matters. I don't think she felt that her life didn't matter. I think she was just so sad and broken that she didn't know how to cope. So that's where I felt that it was really important for her to have another person come in and share, that wasn't me, share really what was going on and just dig deep and get to the roots of the issue. I really do firmly believe in that. And a lot of times when someone says that they just don't want to live anymore, a lot of times it's just you're not dealing with your issues and you don't know how. It's not your fault. It's just that you just don't know how. You don't have the tools. You don't know how to navigate. And this world can be really overwhelming. And people tell you that they care or that they'll pray, but at the end of the day, you're still left with your pain. You're still left with your brokenness. And I was feeling for her. I knew that there were some reasons that she was really struggling. So back to the hospital, because the reason why I share some of that is because it's key to a lot of this journey. And I'm not going to share the whole story in this particular video. I'm going to probably share it in 2 to 3 parts. But when we were there, they asked her if she was feeling suicidal. She said yes. I was slightly uncomfortable with that, just simply because I know how the hospitals work. But I wanted her to be honest and, say, yeah, I've been feeling pretty bad the past few days. Unfortunately, in this case, it was a huge piece to the puzzle that hindered a lot of her getting good care. And I will explain that as I further tell this story and our experience and kind of what we went through. And it wasn't good. It just wasn't good. So while we were there, she started having these seizures, and they were pretty shocking to me. I had never seen anything like that in person before. And I instantly thought, okay, I think my daughter has epilepsy. That's what it looked like. So they did give her some medication to calm her down. It was a pretty heavy medication. It really made her very out of it. It caused her to be very fearful, unreasonably fearful. And I am going to share a little bit of that footage with you. So that's sort of what I was dealing with a little bit. It was hard. I started to actually videotape, well, not videotape, but on my phone. I started recording what was happening. I kind of had recorded some of her involuntary body movements as well, because again, I didn't know how to explain this to the doctors if I had to explain. I did send the footage to my mom and sister, and my mom immediately was like, I'm on my way. My mom lives 4 hours away, and I didn't know if I should have her come or not because I didn't know what I was dealing with again. They decided to admit her. They had a pediatrician from the pediatric unit look at her and just felt like they needed to run some tests and see what was really going on, because they just didn't know. But little did I know that this key piece, because she wasn't feeling too hot, they really, again, I wasn't really aware of what was actually happening at this point, because it was still fairly new, early in the evening, and we hadn't been necessarily sent to the pediatric unit yet. So I was just kind of a little freaked out because I didn't know what was wrong with my daughter. And the pediatric doctor came in and asked if she could speak with me alone out in the hall, and we talked a little bit about how she was feeling, and I said, yeah, I kind of told her she's been a little bummed out, but I was cautious, but I wasn't really feeling like that was what we needed to be talking about. They decided to admit her. We did end up going to the pediatric unit. They had in her room what's called a sitter or a watcher. And I wasn't picking up on anything at this point. I just felt like it was to keep her safe because they were overcompensating because she had said she, wasn't feeling too well emotionally. I was still focused on the seizures and that aspect. I was kind of in shock a little bit, and just didn't know what to do. And I, of course, was praying and asking for the Lord to intervene in this situation. So this person was in the room all the time. They switched shifts. The whole time we were there, I think we had a total of 3 or 4 caregivers in the room, and I wouldn't even call them caregivers. I would say they are exactly what they are, as watchers. Again, I felt it was unnecessary with me in the room, but I wasn't picking up on what was going on. Now, when I left, I understood why they were trying to be cautious and all that kind of stuff. Again, I felt like it was overcompensating. Because we weren't there for that reason, and it really wasn't that serious. It was really about her physical issues. And so when we were in the pediatric unit, I'm thinking back because when we were in the ER, it happened too. They asked me to step out, which I thought was strange. And then when we were in the pediatric unit, they did it again. And I think it was the next day. And I was irritated because I thought, well, why would I step out? That's ridiculous. My daughter is not doing okay. What do you need to talk to her privately about? I just thought that was bizarre. And I kind of let them know a little bit that I wasn't thrilled with that choice. I wasn't rude. I just thought it was unnecessary. And I think they were leaning towards the fact that maybe she had maybe taken more of her antidepressant than what she was supposed to, which I thought was weird. I know my daughter really well. That is not something that I think she cognitively, at this time she's only 11, and yes, I realize 11-year-olds can be very smart. She is very smart, which is partly why I've homeschooled her. They got to check all avenues. So they did check her for what's called serotonin syndrome. It's when you have too much of the serotonin from the medication. In her case, it was sertraline in her system. And because she had just started on it, I did allow for her to be put on a antidepressant. I was not okay with it, but I felt that we had gotten to a place where maybe it was necessary. I really felt like what my daughter needed was just a break. Maybe a therapeutic type setting where she could just take a break for a couple of weeks or so and just really focus on herself and really address what was going on with her. I wasn't alarmed, I guess is what I'm saying. Although I was taking it seriously. And I know in the hospital they have to take all precautions. That's their job. They can get sued. I get that. So they did a lot of testing and blood work and whatever it is they do in hospitals to figure out some of these things. And they figured out that it wasn't the serotonin syndrome. At least they didn't think it was. I think the jury's still out on that. And I say that because I did get downwind that it doesn't necessarily have to happen in the time frame that typical cases happen in. And we are, 6 months into the situation now. And yeah, so anyhow, I'm totally like green behind the ears with all this. I don't know what's going on other than something's going on with my daughter, and I knew it wasn't right. I kind of started to feel like maybe some of this was spiritual. And for those who were raised in the church or who have any knowledge of spiritual matters, you will know what I am talking about. For those of you that don't, please just bear with me and understand that this is my journey. This is what I went through, and this is the platform in which I'm choosing to express the reality of what I went through. So in other words, you don't have to understand, and it's okay. So I just couldn't put my finger on some of this. But this particular hospital decided that she really needed to be seen by a neurologist. They didn't know what to do. They didn't have the expertise at this particular hospital. They wanted her to go to a specific hospital. I'm not going to say the hospital's name, but it is a very well-known hospital in Seattle, Washington. So that's what we did. Because she was continuing to have seizures, and the medicine that they were giving her, again, was causing her to cry just profusely and fear. And it was just like, okay, the medicine's working, but the reaction that she's having is just so over the top. And I had to walk her through it. And So they had an ambulance take her because she was having so many seizures. And again, they didn't know what it was. So I didn't ride with her because my car was at this particular hospital. And so I got in my car. I was there real shortly after she got there. And this is where things start to get really interesting and really hard, and where I started to pick up on things weren't good. So with that being said, I am going to stop here because I think this is a great stopping place to share kind of what started to happen at this other hospital and really the trauma that we went through. It was really hard. And it was just me and her. Although her dad was present, my mom was in town, it really was just me and her. And I'm telling you that God is so faithful to his people because he let me know what was going on there. So within having said that, I thank you so much for taking time to listen to my story and to glean from it if you can. Please glean from it. If you are going through PNS or anything close to that, there's another diagnosis. They used to call it conversion disorder. They're kind of coming away from that with good reason. Functional neurological disorder is another aspect to this. My daughter, however, is not only dealing with PNS, she does have the functional neurological disorder piece as well to it. And I'll talk a little bit about that too in another video, but it's hard. And if you are going through this, I will tell you right now before I finish my story that there is hope. You can get well. You can. With a little bit of an open mind and taking a hard look at your situation and being willing to have the courage to dig deep. Because again, remember, this is a psychological disorder, okay? I have really wrapped my mind around some things with this. It's very real. You really are having those seizures. You really are having those blackouts. And it really is, for lack of better words, it can be a disability. It can keep you from working. It can keep you from driving. It can keep you from having a normal life. I am my daughter's caregiver. We're in a better place with it. But believe me, I understand. I have empathy. It's kind of an isolating thing. It's a very isolating health issue. And if you haven't walked it, it might be really hard to understand it. Even if you are a medical professional and you see this come through your office or your unit. When it happens to you or your child, you really don't know. You really don't know what it's like. So I want to thank you again for being with me today, and I love you. And I want you to have a wonderful and blessed day. There is hope. Bye-bye.